Rich, thanks for coming in today. Now, you and I have known each other for, it'll be 10 years or more.
Yeah.
And so when we first met, you just left the Entourage, had set up your own investment and advisory business where you're working with a range of small businesses. One of those ended up being Fitsop, which you co-founded, went from 20 sites to 70 and exited to a US firm. And I believe they've now continued to grow to 150 plus or something all over the country.
Yes, yep. So went in there at two Fitstops, and co-founded the franchise model, and then private equity backed Lift Brands brought out my stake just at the start of 2020, just before COVID kind of ramped up. Yeah.
Now you also took during that time another business, Unfiltered, a New Zealand business, from being just a pure New Zealand play to the US as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, spent some time in San Francisco and the Silicon Valley, and then we had a family office buy our stake out of that business as well. So that was good.
Yeah, right. Massive growth on all fronts that you faced there. And these days, I understand that you're CEO of Little Zaks, one of the fastest growing.
Early education businesses. Yeah, a lot of people don't know what to call the business. Is it childcare? Is it kindergarten? Is it preschool? But it's like a private school, for mini children. So between 6 weeks and 6 years. So been there for 5 years now. Invested in that business at the start of 2020, and I've been CEO there for 5 years.
Yeah. Awesome. So look, it sounds like everything that you've touched has like turned to gold or just absolutely taken off. But in our chat today, I want to have a chat about some of the secrets, some of the lessons, and some of the hard lessons along the way to have this ridiculous amount of success and growth in all the businesses you've been a part of.
Sure. It's definitely not linear, and it might seem like everything that I touch turns to gold. That is absolutely not true. There is a lot of mistakes, a lot of lessons, a lot of maturing, and a lot of growing up that has had to kind of take place along that journey. And a lot of lessons. But really, really proud of where I'm at today, and definitely proud of Little Zaks, driving that business every day now.
Awesome. That's why you're not around for these long lunches anymore.
I know.
Working.
I'm busy. So. I'm always working. We've got we look after and educate around about 10,000 families a week now. 1,500 staff, 50 locations across Australia. So it's it's turned into quite a powerhouse of a business in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our chat today, let's dial it back to what small business owners are looking for. Because at iKeep, it's the small business and the growing businesses that we do a lot of work with. And I think they would get a lot of benefit from the lessons you've learned along the way. First question I've got for you, mindset as an entrepreneur and a business owner. How do you maintain the right mindset? What tips have you got for someone starting out a business? Why is mindset so important?
Yeah, great topic and great question, because I think that people don't necessarily get into business because, they're thinking about all the challenges that are going to happen. Normally they get into business because they're really passionate about the product or service that they create. They might be really passionate about making the coffee, so they'll open a coffee shop. They might be passionate about technology, so they'll go and start an app or a tech business. And often one of the things in relation to mindset that, I think is super important is no one tells you when you start a business that it's between the ears. A lot of it, it's the lonely nights. It's the, am I going to make payroll? I've got my BAS coming up. How am I going to make sure that I'm spending the right amount of money on marketing, paying my BAS, paying my staff. It's all of those things that become the reason you need to have some sort of mindset tool in place, because it can often be, a lot of complexities and things coming at you to deal with, and I'm talking about sort of as a first business that you don't expect.
Totally.
That have nothing to do with making the coffee or coding the app or whatever the case may be.
I've kind of coded the phrase unrealistic optimism is almost what you need to have as a business owner.
Totally business. Yeah, and almost this this really beautiful innocence where your naivety, where I wouldn't have done half of the stuff that I've done if I knew what it took and B what road it was going to lead down. So it is this naivety, but I also think your question was, what do I think is important around mindset?
Absolutely.
Like, number one, having a positive mindset and having that relentless optimism that this thing that, you know, you're trying to create is going to work is number one. And the reason why that's important is everyone around you, whether that's suppliers, customers, staff, they need to know that you really believe, you know, at a fundamental heart level in what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And if they know that you believe that and you're positive about that, they will then go on to be able to follow you, you know, into what you're doing. Look, for me, I would recommend more from a health perspective as well. Like, you know, make sure you're looking after yourself. Like, it's so easy to...
So you think your health's directly related to your mindset?
Oh, absolutely, right? It's so easy to, you know, go down the path of, you know, drinking too much or, you know, going out or dealing with pressure in what I would call an unhealthy way. And I definitely did that in my 20s in business, right? And, you know, I think my advice to anyone around that is like, you know, your health, you know, what you're putting in your mouth, you know, how much sleep you're getting, how much caffeine you're having, like those things sound really trivial, but compounded over many years, make a huge impact on how you feel, and then therefore how you operate as well.
Or even the 8 hours sleep. I feel like such an old man, but I make sure I always get 8 hours of sleep every night and just waking up feeling great every morning.
I don't believe you.
Most nights.
Yes. But yeah, absolutely. You know, those things, like, I guess we're talking more holistically around mindset, like, you know, health, having a positive mindset. But also I think...
well, it comes back to putting yourself number one is almost what you're talking about there. Like, I think I did that in the early years, maybe didn't prioritize my own health and well-being, realizing that was one of the best ROIs you could probably make to be the best version of yourself for the business too, rather than being a bit tired, a bit burnt out, working 6 days instead of 5 days, doing longer days and not getting the recovery time.
Yeah, totally. The other thing around mindset I will say is that, you know, whenever you start a business, we talk about like work-life balance, right? Like it's a really big topic, or work-life harmony, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, I think that part of the challenge is I think working for, you know, 40 years, 6 or 7 days a week, is definitely not the right recipe.
No.
However, from my perspective, there is a time period there where there needs to be maybe an expectation set with, you know, your loved ones, people around you, friends, family, children, that, hey, for the next, like, you know, 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, I'm going to go really hard. Because in order to achieve anything great, there needs to be a level of obsession to be able to do that, right? And I think clearly communicating that to people around you can, you know, really prevent from conflict as well, whether that's you know, in the home or, you know, with whoever you're with or your you know, kids. So because often as a business owner you miss out on a lot of those social things perhaps in the early stages. You know, when you're building, you miss out on the golf days and the dinners and times with friends and picking up the kids from school.
Absolutely.
And you know, for me, no one ever explained that. You know, and I think if I was talking to someone listening to this, I would say, hey, like, set a realistic picture of what that actually looks like.
So one of the best definitions of success that I read recently was someone that has enough to do what they want to do when they want to do it. So if like picking up the kids from school, or you can have lunch where you want to have lunch, or go where you want to go, and you've done that off the back of creating your own business, you're a successful entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
So set a realistic line of success. It doesn't have to be the private jets, the super yachts, or whatever else. If you can live life on your terms, you're in a really good place. Yeah,
1,000%, right? And success for everybody is going to look different. You know, if you look at some of the crazy kind of tech valuations you see, you know, pre-COVID, you know, and companies just growing so quickly, it's really easy for a small business owner to kind of feel inferior to that, because they're thinking, well, you know, I'm not raising, you know, $50, $100 million checks of capital. I haven't gone to the US, or, you know, I'm not kind of shooting the lights out. It's easy for a small business owner to kind of feel inferior to that. Where what I would say to that is, like, everyone's on their own path. And success to me is different to success to you, and it would be different to a lot of people out there. So, you know, getting clear on your definition of success and what that looks like at an entire life perspective I think is important.
Yeah. So one of the things I admire with the businesses you've started and been a part of is that they all do good. Like if we have a look at the fitness industry that you've been a part of, or education for children and all of this, do you think having a really strong why is an important part of what you've done and why you've been able to push so hard?
Yeah, totally, 1,000%. I often, I've said this many times before, but I couldn't be involved in something that I didn't believe in.
Right.
Whether that is education of children, with the Entourage, that was advisory and education to business owners. Fitsop was health, well-being. Any business that I do, I absolutely have to fundamentally believe in the product, the service, or the core of what it does. I'm not so far lent towards that capitalist mentality where it's like money at all costs. For me, there has to be purpose, behind what I'm doing, and it has to do good in the world. It has to be kind of a win for me, a win for the customers, a win for the staff. And I often say to my team today at Little Zaks, if it was just about money, I'd go and trade stocks. Right? It's about so much more than that. And I think anyone leading a business, small or medium, has to really have a look at, well, hey, why am I doing this? Because in the moments when it gets hard, in the moments when you're like, I can't go on, in the moments where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get to that next stage, there has to be a fundamental why there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. People have asked me the similar question on it's like, well, how do you find a why in bookkeeping and payroll? And I go, gosh, it's one of the easiest questions to answer. A small business owner, their biggest investment, the way that they're putting their kids through school, paying the rent and surviving is through is their business. A small business owner's biggest asset is often their business. It's not the house or something.
Absolutely,
they've things.
Yeah.
And so in the iKeep business, we are helping people with their biggest asset to try and help them make really clear decisions on the biggest thing in their life. So I feel a really strong why, and which is why it resonates so much.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, having known you and been around your accounting, advisory and finance businesses for a long time now, you absolutely do that. And I think that is a deep purpose, number one. But what's really cool about that is I find purpose is unique to the individual. So I don't think there's anybody I've ever met who cares as much about small businesses succeeding and knowing their numbers and doing their BAS on time and having their live bank feeds. I've never known anyone who cares about that as much as you, right?
Love the data.
Where some people, that is like the worst version of purpose.
Yeah, totally.
And that's why I think purpose is such a beautiful topic, because it's really around, it's unique to you. You care about that, and and that's why I think you've been able to be successful in doing that, because the core of what you do is not how much money can I make, it's how many businesses can I help.
Absolutely.
And a byproduct of that is doing well commercially.
Yeah, totally. Now, we've talked about a couple of different personality types. Do you think anyone can run a business, or are there some personality types that shouldn't be?
That's a really tough question, right? Because it's, are you born with it, or is it a learnt skill? Number one, I think if I address the first thing, I think business is absolutely a learnt skill, like anything else. There is a methodology, there is the skill set, there is a process, and you can get really good at it.
And a level of discipline too.
And a level of discipline. And you can get really good at it from experience. I think there's not a lot of connection between bookwork and building a business. I think there's a huge connection between experience and learning and failing and advisors and all of those things. I don't think anybody should own a business, but that doesn't mean that, I think that there's a lot of people in the world who have really good ideas. There's a lot of founders in the world who are incredible at their product, they're passionate about what they do, they're super smart, when it comes to their little niche. But maybe they're not the right person to run that business. So, running it, owning it, and starting it might be three different things. So,
which might be three different people depending on stages of the business.
Absolutely. I think everybody has magic in them. Everybody has a bit of creativity and a
uniqueness
bit of uniqueness or some sort of cool idea. But I will finish that question by saying there's one thing I believe that sets apart a phenomenal business person, be it small business owner, CEO, founder, entrepreneur, whatever label you want to put on it.
Yeah.
And that is execution.
Yeah.
Like there is no substitute for hard work, discipline, and execution on a daily basis, relentlessly compounded over years.
Yeah.
There is no substitute for that. And that's the classic hard work type statement.
Yeah. So if someone was in the process, in the first few months of setting up their business, what should they be doing to give them the best chance of success?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really clear things. Number one, have good people around you. If you've not walked this path before, and that could be, that could be an advisor, that could be setting up a little advisory board to run your idea by, it could be joining a business club or a networking group, something like that. Like have some people around you who are helping you, even just bounce ideas off because it can be lonely.
Yeah, that's why I found things like Cub really good because you're in like business owner groups.
Totally.
Because some people, like I've found a lot of my social circles now are all business owners.
Of
so
course.
I'm in this great place where, hey, I've got this issue, or hey, I'm thinking about doing that.
Yeah.
I've got all my closest friends are business owners, so we can have very candid chats about things that we've faced or stresses. Whereas I know a lot of people who might be in a job just don't know a business owner.
Yeah.
And so how do you think someone like that finds people to talk with or that they can confide in?
Totally. And I think that will be, like, to your point, you mentioned Cub before, or, groups like the Entourage, or, being a part of those kind of networking groups, I think are awesome. There's heaps of meetups across Sydney for, startups and entrepreneurs. There's incubator programs, there's startup programs. There's a good ecosystem we have in Sydney. So that's number one, have good people around you. Number two, you don't have to have everything figured out.
Yeah, good call.
For an early stage business, you don't need the 90-page business plan. You don't need to have your, full financial forecast done and a cash flow model. And
controversial cash flows. Come on.
You asked me 2 months in, right? Just start. Just start. Have a one-page plan with really clearly who's your product, who's your market, who's your customer, what does your brand stand for, what are you selling, who's buying, what are the unit economics and price points around that?
Yeah, nice.
And have you got customers?
Yeah.
And I think thirdly, be open that whatever you start does not have to be what it looks like in 6 months' time or in 12 months' time, right? It's not. Be okay to iterate, move fast, change what you're doing, but never be prepared to move away from the goal or the vision. And that's like the kind of last final wrap up around that. If you truly believe in something and you're passionate about it and you've got a conviction behind it, whether you change the product or the service or the way you do it or the way it's wrapped or how much you charge for it or how you build it or how you put it into technology, that's okay. But the vision shouldn't change. The commitment to that path shouldn't change. And if it does change or you kind of get bored of it, maybe it wasn't right in the first place. Yeah, okay.
So on that point, you've been running your business for a while, hypothetically, running your business for a while. Things aren't as easy as what you thought they were going to be. You feel like you're not getting as many customers or something as you might have hoped. How do you know whether it's time to pivot or whether it's time to toss in the towel and go, there's no opportunity here? Or is there ever a time, or does that mean you're not passionate enough, or was there never an opportunity? What are your thoughts if things are really tough?
I think every business owner has doubts. That's normal. I'm going to give you a textbook answer here. And the textbook answer is, in order to know those things, so whether you've had product lines that are declining, cash flow that's not looking great, numbers that are going backwards, marketing that's not performing, you've got to know that with metrics. So, if you're measuring some of those things, so you've been in a business for a while and you're noticing there's a slowdown, that's going to be a slowdown in, could be a slowdown in leads, could be a slowdown in engagement, conversions.
All right, let's have a chat about metrics inside a business. There can be lead metrics on what we're doing in sales and marketing, lag metrics, which might be financial or customer number based. What do you think a business owner should be looking at with metrics in their business?
Well, 2 answers to that question.
Okay.
First answer is I always have in any of my companies what I call the 7 vital signs.
Right.
Vital signs meaning they're vital to the business staying alive.
Nice.
And in each business, they might be different depending on the business. But things like in a service-based business, I would always have a revenue to wages percentage. So knowing what is my total cost of my people versus how much money I'm bringing in a service-based business.
Yep.
I would have revenue performance, and that would be carved up of sales metrics, and then cost per acquisition. So how much is it costing me to acquire a customer? And then, of course, I would also have something around retention.
Yep.
So am I retaining my clients? Is there churn? And I'd want to know what that churn is both on a monthly basis, but then I want to know what that churn is from an annualized perspective. I'd have an NPS score, so Net Promoter Score, to know a finger on the pulse, are my customers really happy with my product or service right now? If I had a big employee base, I would need a Net Staff Promoter Score.
Totally.
Are my team happy? Are they engaged? Do they believe in do they believe in what we're doing?
Because that's a good lead indicator to staff turnover, I guess.
Of course it is.
Lead measures so that you can do something about it before it's a problem.
Yeah, of course. And then depending on the business, right? Like if you're a tech business, you're going to want to measure compounded annual growth rate. You're going to know, is my business growing year on year, top line, and by what percentage? If you're going to go to private equity, they're going to want to look at those sort of things. If you're a smaller business, you want to know what's your EBITDA margin. Is your EBITDA margin shrinking or expanding? Therefore, is there anything around price controls that you need to adjust or adapt? So and they can be different for every business, but I call them the 7 vital signs. And the reason why I use 7 is I go, well, anything higher than that, they're not important. So you've really got to have like a debate with yourself, maybe with your accountant, with your management team. What are the 7 most important metrics that if I just looked at them once a week, I know that we're going to be okay?
I like that. It's similar to the way it was described to me when I did some EOS training 3 or 4 years ago. And they're like, imagine you're off on a remote island and all you could get was an update by a postcard once a day. What metrics would you need to see on that postcard while you're sitting there sipping margaritas with little palm trees or whatever out of it? What would you need to see on that postcard to know that everything's okay? And that was kind of bang on with what you're talking about with 7 signs. Not too many, but a simple little, what metrics do you need to know to make sure your business is okay?
And you can have other metrics behind them. So as an example, those 7 metrics are at a company level or at a total business level. But you might have smaller metrics, per department. If your business is that big, you'll have your marketing ones, your finance ones, your sales ones. And then if there's a problem on the sort of top level of those 7 vital signs, you should always be able to drill down into the detail and go, okay, what's the actual problem? In what department is it in? Now, I always say there's 3 things that drive a business: people, process, and technology.
Nice.
So I'd go into it and I'd go, okay, if that metric is not where it needs to be, is it a people problem? Is it a process problem? Or is it a technology problem? And then from there, back to what I said, a couple of minutes ago, there needs to be a plan that is executed in order for those numbers to actually improve. A lot of mistakes I see either executives or business owners make is they become analysts. They know the data, they can see the data, but what are they doing about the data? And that right there, the intersection between knowing numbers and having this skill set and drive to change numbers and change behavior is ultimately what grows a company. Because any analyst can look at numbers, right?
All right, so you're someone who has a lot of things going, balancing family life, businesses, investments, and time for yourself. What tips or what lessons have you learned in being able to juggle so many things?
I've got a really clear answer to that because I've got a formula that I use and some kind of things that are really important for me. Number one, I learned a long time ago that I need to own my time or someone else does. So the way that works is like it sounds cliche, but my calendar absolutely governs every single thing that I do. And that calendar is color coded. It has everything from personal, health, exercise, kids' time, meetings, CEO time, and that is diarised kind of 6 to 7 days a week, and that is planned out 1 to 3 months in advance. And the reason that is, it's not because I'm important or I enjoy it or anything like that. It's really around, if I don't do that, there's no way that I'd fit everything in that I have. So really strong calendar diary management system, and a great EA. Shout out to Katrina if she's listening. Having that planned is really important. And then what you put in that for me is also really important. So, start the day every day with, some time to myself, prayer, meditation, swim in the ocean if I can, and then I'll normally get a gym session in the morning. So by the time I'm in the office by 7:38, I'm dialed in, done everything I needed to do, and really set myself right for the day. And that's been a huge game changer in terms of how I operate and producing productivity.
And so when you're in the office environment, a lot of people complain that, turning up to the office, I get so many distractions, whether it's emails, team walking up to me, and I just, as a senior exec in a business, I find it hard to have productive time during a 9 to 5. How do you personally manage those things?
Yeah, great question. I have adapted my style a little bit, right? Like, say, 10 years ago, I was very much like on a boat with a laptop anywhere in the world, and I could work, no problem. I think running now such a big business and having grown, Little Zaks to the scale that it is, my business partner in that business really taught me, and I was forced to through sort of compliance and governance in that sector, really taught me the importance of being across every detail in the business. And really understanding truly what's happening in your business. As a CEO of a large company, I need to know what's happening at every level at all times, not because it's a control thing, but because if I don't know that and I need to make decisions, I'm making decisions off information that is either wrong or getting to me too slow. So,
do you think it's fair to say that the bigger the business is, the more detailed the data needs to be?
Absolutely, no question, right? Like, and one of the things I really enjoy about my role now is if there's an issue and all my execs are in the office, we will solve it right there and right then. It's not, hey, can we jump on a Zoom call? We need to have a meeting about this. It's, guys, in the boardroom now, we need to solve a problem. This issue's happened. How do we think we can deal with it? Literally within 24 hours, we would have solved that problem that would take most companies a month. Whilst it can feel constraining at times because I'm used to being quite free and entrepreneurial in that way, I've really enjoyed the discipline of going to an office, showing up with my team, like getting into a decent routine, and my team knowing that, hey, Rich is going to be in, so we can have a conversation with him about that. And I think that's held us in good stead over our growth period as well. And that also means you've got a greater kind of tightening on cash flow. You're managing everything, on a detailed and a daily basis. You know what's happening in, the sales department, the recruitment world. You can hear conversations across the office that you wouldn't otherwise hear.
So you're more of a fan for working in the office rather than working from home?
I actually am. And I never thought that would come out of my mouth. I don't.
It's funny how we change over time on perspectives on things, but I totally agree with you.
Now I don't enjoy working at home anymore. And a few reasons why. Home is my home. That's where I'm dad.
Like to keep it separate.
I'm training, and I definitely believe that life is blended together. But how do my kids know that if I'm on the laptop, how do they know that dad's working? Right? They're going to come up and kind of say, "Hey, dad," like they're not going to know that I'm working.
Totally.
And with back to the first point around fitting everything in your life,
productivity,
right? Like when I'm not in the office, I don't want to be working. Although naturally, as a CEO, as a business owner,
any business owner is always on a little bit.
You always are. However, trying to get that time away from the office to do life is also really important.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even these days, I've become so much better at just not looking at emails over the weekend. So the weekend is purely a recharge time, and then whenever I'm at work, it's 110% when I'm in work. But then when I'm outside of work, don't look at it. Don't let it steal your mind or steal your headspace.
Yeah, of course.
Even-
And your productivity, no question, will be higher if you do that.
Oh, it absolutely is. Absolutely is.
My kind of system is I try and be home by 6 every night.
Nice.
So do a 10, 11-hour day in the office. And then from 6 to 8 is like, kid time or dinner or whatever. And then from 8 to 10, if I've got to catch up on emails or write a report or look over something, I can do that then.
Yeah.
Right? So I try and have that little carve up in the evening.
Yeah. So one of the conversations I've enjoyed that we've had recently has been talking about that Grant Cardone show, The Undercover Billionaire.
Yes.
So basically he gets dropped in some little remote town, back blocks of Colorado or something,
Yes.
where nobody knows who he is, and he's got to make $1 million business. He's starting at zero, make $1 million business over a couple of months or whatever he's there. I was fascinated and excited by this whole thing. But it also just made me think about different ways that people hustle, people make money and all, which is obviously fundamentally what we're doing as business owners. And I really enjoyed your perspective on this show and your thoughts on how to make money. Do you maybe want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Traditionally, being in business means you've kind of labelled a capitalism kind of approach where it's like, how much can I obtain? How much can I take? How much can I kind of benefit myself, right? And look, there's nothing wrong with that. I think my take on it is the most successful businesses that I see and the ones that, and definitely the founders and CEOs that resonate with me and my personal approach is any transaction, there has to be a win-win. And the transaction has to be of equal value. If I could be a billionaire but have screwed a lot of people over along the way, I would rather not be a billionaire. And that's where we started talking around those kinds of things, right? I think there's definitely a place where you can grow a company, have really happy staff, happy customers, and do very well, and still overachieve with everybody winning around you. It doesn't have to be, I get a lot and you get a tiny bit, or I win and you lose. When you're doing a transaction, say a B2B transaction, this philosophy maybe changes. If you're dealing with two sophisticated people in like a private equity transaction and you're trying to decide the value of a business and it's kind of big business against big business, if it's a fair fight, no problem. There's going to be a bit of a winner and a bit of a loser. Give some, take some, that's fine. But when it's kind of large, powerhouse, hungry greed versus someone who is not going to understand that.
Any individual.
Is not sophisticated and loses, I kind of don't like that. It's got to be a win-win-win.
Absolutely.
Same as people around you, right? If they're a part of your journey and they're on your growth, give them credit. Reward them with shares. Make them kind of be a part of your journey so that everyone around you wins, rather than you having a lot and people around you having not much.
So it comes back to alignment, I guess, at the end of the day, and making sure all the key stakeholders are aligned inside a business.
Absolutely. There's plenty of wealthy people that we both know who aren't happy either. So I think if you can find a little bit of happiness, generosity, and a balanced value equation in your transactions, I think that will hold you in good stead emotionally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk for a moment about understanding who your ideal customer is. When you were starting in your gym business, how did you know who your ideal market was going to be? Is it just anybody? Or do you cast a wide net, or do you go really narrow when you're trying to figure out how to get your customer base started?
I think there's two answers to that. The first thing is you're going to have an idea in your head. And that idea in your head often will be wrong.
Right.
So first of all, you're going to cast the net as wide, but as specific as possible. And there's two things you're looking at there. One is the demographics, as in where do they live, what do they earn, what do they enjoy doing, etc. And the other one is the psychographics. The psychographics is where I play and it's what I care about.
Right.
What are their fears, their frustrations, their loves, what keeps them up at night, what are they motivated by, how do they make decisions, what are their dreams, their aspirations and their fears. That's what I think an ideal customer looks like, because that's how you actually market. So if you can combine demographics and then psychographics and then overlay those two things with really what you think your market is and what your product will serve. And then the last piece there is you need to test that. So that's what we call product to market fit. So testing with what you initially think and being really open to tweak that.
Yeah.
And to answer your original question, in Fitsop as an example, if I look at what the market was when we first started Fitsop, very, very different to who trains at a Fitsop today.
Yeah.
When I look at little Zaks Academy and the market of our parents and our children, we are a private school, for young children. So our parents are aspirational parents, parents that want their children to learn cooking, language, yoga inside of the facility because that's what they care about, right? We're very much an education and an aspirational brand. Where some parents might just want their child to be safe, nurtured, and be in nature. Not right, not wrong. But you can imagine if you got those two things wrong, as in your market and then how your product spoke to that. You could have
just not be interested.
They're not going to be interested.
Yeah.
So in the early stages of business, and even as you're growing, you need to constantly be refining who is your market, what is your product, and do you still have product market fit? And is there something else that you need to tweak, adapt, change to be able to get product to market fit? Often there might be nothing wrong with your product. You're just serving it up to the wrong people.
Yeah, totally.
And that's a huge common mistake I see in businesses.
Yeah.
Product's awesome, selling to the wrong person. And then what you do is you go and change your product and you make it less awesome. And then you're confused.
Or you face burnout because you're just butting your head against the wall trying to figure it out.
Absolutely, yeah, totally.
I've got 5 real brief, real quick questions I want to ask you before we wrap up today. What's one mistake you made in your early days that you would avoid if you could do it again?
There's a lot. If I had to give you one, it would be expecting people to operate at the same pace, intensity, and passion that I had.
Yeah, wow. All right, question number 2. If you could start a business tomorrow and you had the time available to do it, what industry would you start that business in?
Australia has an aging population. We don't have a great solution to be able to look after a lot of those people. So I would look at a solution that is a wellness-based solution, not a pharmaceutical-based solution for the aging population. And I would underpin that with AI somehow.
Yeah, nice. All right. Question 3. How do you stay motivated in tough times?
By keeping really, really crystal clear on the vision, what I'm trying to achieve, why I started the business, and for me, who's watching.
Yeah.
That's huge for me.
Yeah, right.
My children, people around me, people that believed in me, my staff, people that backed me. If this fails, who's watching?
Big one. Next question. What books, podcasts, or resources would you recommend to a small business owner?
Good. Again, there's a bunch of ones that I listen to on a regular basis. Love the Straight Talk with Mark Boris. There's always some really solid kind of guests and characters on that. Good, actionable advice. I love the Harvard Business Review, which normally comes out every year in a little book. You can download that online. There's a bunch of other kind of publications out of the US, like Forbes and the usual media publications that you can kind of get little bite-sized chunks from. Subscribe to the AFR, so I'm across what's happening kind of global macroeconomics. And then this one's a bit geeky, but this is for where I'm at right now. I'll often read annual reports of public companies to see how they're performing, what they did to pivot, what their strategy was. Because for me, like, you can read advice books or business coaching books, but where I find most of my insights come from is when I look at an actual business. It's not a model, it's not a catchphrase, it's not a theory, it's not a cute theory or a diagram. It's a company that is live, being traded, getting valuations updated on it, and you can see real time out of annual reports and trading updates. What did they actually do? And then I compare them over periods to truly understand what they did to build the business, and did the market agree with what they did? Did their share price go up?
Totally. Yeah, did it work at the end of the day? Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much for coming in for a chat today. It's always fun to pick your brain on running a business, growing a business, and the lessons you've learned along the way. And there's so much more we've got to cover, but let's do that another time.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Simon. It's great to come in, and well done on all your success as well.
Cool. Appreciate it.